So I'm here today with Darren from Urban Hillsides Realty, and he's my guru for all things real estate. And I wanted to talk today about the ADUs because it's this wonderful new ordinance to increase density, and we're all very excited by it. But the one thing I think people don't think about is you're moving from a private citizen to becoming a landlord. And I think people don't think about what their responsibilities are as they change from just living there with their family and having a backyard to now becoming a legally responsible landlord.
Yeah, there's a business component to it. There's a component of cohabitating in a space. If you're living on site, those are definitely things to be aware of prior to entering it. And I'm glad you're putting out this video because they can be aware of it before they even start the process. Yeah,
exactly. So maybe let's pick apart the first one. Which would be first? Maybe just your legal responsibility as a landlord. Of course, we know that as you have an ADU, you should have a separate bank account, keep track of your expenses and your income, blah blah blah. That's easy. But what responsibilities does a landlord have? Do they have to register the unit with the city? Tell me more about that. What their legal responsibilities are.
Sure. So when you add an ADU, you technically become a multi-unit location. And the way the laws are in the city of Los Angeles and the state as well, there's regulation at that level. The ADU would be outside of a rent control, rent stabilization environment for 15 years upon issuance of the certificate of occupancy. But your primary house, assuming that is built prior to 1978, now does fall under rent control, and you need to register that house with the city of Los Angeles.
So you need to register your front house with the city of Los Angeles as soon as you get the final permit on the ADU?
That's correct.
Wow. Actually, I didn't even know that one.
Yep.
So you need to register the ADU, and
ADU not registered.
You don't need to register the ADU.
No.
Oh,
first 15 years.
First 15 years, no registration.
Correct.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
But you have to register the front house. So if you're living in the front house, you register it, but you're not paying rent, blah, blah, blah. If you rent it out,
right. So when you file rent with the city rent stabilization board, they do periodic visits to inspect the condition of the property to make sure it's mostly for safety conditions. Mm-hmm. But if you occupy, you simply check the box that says I occupy. There's no reason for you to come, and they won't. But if you were to move out of that house, then you would get those 3 to 4 year inspections that they would come and inspect that house initially, and then after 15 years, both units.
Yeah, so the front house, now the front house then, if you rent it out right away or any time along there, you're under rent control, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And the fees aren't huge. I mean, between the two components, it might be $125 a year.
So you pay a registration fee every year.
Exactly. And they send you a notice every year. Now they also monitor the rents, which is interesting. They ask you how much you're collecting in rent every year, which doesn't determine the price you pay, but they've started doing that about 3 years ago. And they could come. They give you notice if they're going to come. They don't. It's not a random check. They give you plenty of notice, and they could come once every 4 years.
So then, as far as the rent on the ADU, that is not reported for 15 years? I mean,
all the rents are reported?
All the rents are reported.
Yes, but they won't come and inspect.
They won't come and inspect for 15 years.
That's correct.
Oh, interesting. Yep. Okay, so it really is like a free hall pass for 15 years.
Yes, it is.
Now, as far as rent increases during that 15-year period, is there any limitation on that?
There are. Not on the ADU, no.
So the ADU really is a hall pass for 15 years.
At the city level.
At the city level.
Now, the state issued AB 1482, which did set some caps on rent increases, which is up to 10%, also tied to consumer price index. So there's a formula to figure out there.
And that is the same as the city rent control that you...
Nope.
Okay.
Separate. City rent control votes every year. There's been a freeze on rent increases for the past 3 years. They should go back into effect in 2024. But every year they set that amount. It's been as low as 0 and as high as 5% in the time I've paid attention for over 20 years. Typically it's in the range of 3%, and they establish that June of every year, and for the following year, that's the amount you can increase rent.
Okay.
And that would be for the rent stabilized unit.
The rent stabilized unit, yeah. Okay. And so the city of LA, now is there there's city and there's state. Who takes precedent? Do you know, is there one like you have to follow the city or the state? Like which is higher, which is lower?
The more stringent conditions will supersede. And in this case, it's the city.
So the lower one, yeah.
Yes.
So the city sets, for rent control, they set it every June. And
Yes.
so it's not that cost of living plus and no more than 10%.
Right.
No,
5% plus cost of living.
Yeah, it's not
That's
that.
the state level.
That's the
It's
state
not that.
level, but in this case, the city of LA is more stringent, so we have to pay attention to what the city says
Yeah.
every June. Okay, interesting.
Yep.
All right, but still, I didn't know that the ADU is like a free hall pass for 15 years.
Yeah.
No restrictions on rent increases.
You're falling under the state
Yeah.
for rent increases.
Oh, then okay, the trick. So the city does not have any. City is a free hall pass.
Yes.
But this, you still have to pay attention to the state. So then, therefore, it's the what's the formula for that? It's
5% plus CPI with
So-
a max of 10%.
10%. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so always.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're gonna
Okay.
they're gonna get their stake in it.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
fine.
And
Yeah.
that so that is the that controls what you can increase your rent to the tenants of your ADU, and you don't have to register with the state. You just register with the city, right?
There's no state registration.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. But the city enforces the state rule. Should you have a tenant and you raise it too much, like
I don't know that answer.
Yeah. Okay.
That's one answer I don't know.
Yeah. I just what's the trouble?
Somebody
if
has to
you-
enforce
Yeah.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's a variance that you could increase on the city level an additional 1% if you're paying for gas or electricity. It does
Right.
not relate to water.
Yeah.
On sewer, those two you can increase 1% more
Yeah.
per year.
Okay.
Which by far would not cover the difference. So
Right.
my suggestion strongly is if you're going to build an ADU from scratch, try to give it all of its own metered utilities.
Yeah.
Because those prices are just rising at
Yeah.
substantially more dramatic rates than
Yeah.
the allowable rent increase.
That's a good suggestion. We were talking about that earlier, that you would suggest a separate electric meter, which people do, but you're even suggesting a separate water meter.
Yes, and if you live on site and you're fine with a slightly extra maintenance, you could even just put an inline gauge that you can read. If you don't want to put an extra meter and you walk out there every month and read it.
Okay,
You know,
so
or
put an
every 2
inline
months.
meter, but then put that in the contract.
In the rental agreement, that
rental
you're going to
agreement.
charge them
Yeah.
based on that usage.
Right. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you think of any other, these responsibilities that we encounter as we become landlords as far as the ADU? Those are all interesting points. Can you think of any other just legal responsibility issues?
Well, you're once you acquire a tenant, and that's where the legal responsibilities come into play, you are to maintain a livable space with functioning elements in the space. You have to keep the rain out. You have to keep utilities functioning. If there's a problem, you do need to address it in a reasonable amount of time. Co-interactions,
So those are all the standards of LA housing. You have to,
yes.
have a habitable structure. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Other than that, it's keeping an environment that's, and it's different standards of desirability based on tenants, based on owners. But, tenants have the ability to, there are a lot of tenants' rights right now, more than landlord rights.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
The governmental institutions at all levels in our state, on all levels in our whole country, are very pro-tenant. They
Yeah.
just feel landlords have an edge already, so they're helping support the tenants.
So that being the case, that the landlord, that the tenants have sort of more ways to address issues. What would you recommend to somebody doing the first time ADU? What would you recommend they do?
First, I recommend that they first time hire a realtor that cares about getting a good tenant for them and really will walk you through the process.
Yes. So hire a realtor. That's going to cost you a certain percentage of your rent. But hire a realtor maybe just for the first time and lose that money, but they're going to know what you need to watch out for and how to set up a contract.
It's an invaluable education
Yeah.
you're going to get.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it can easily be one time.
Yeah.
And then if you're really paying attention, you'll
Yeah.
get a good contract, you'll understand how to set the tone, establish expectations in the relationship, and it'll make for a substantially better, even the tenants appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, nobody likes a bad relationship on either side of the
Yeah,
aisle.
yeah.
So doing that is very much.
That's good advice. I mean, that's a little investment to learn the ropes.
Yeah, you've spent that much money.
Yeah. Yeah. On
It's
building.
Spend
the-
a little extra
yeah.
at the end.